Hi Dark Realmers, it's horror author Michael J. Elliott here, and I've got another one in our series, Everything You Wanted to Know About ... And today I'm going to be teaching you a few fascinating facts about witches and witchcraft. Okay, Dark Realmers, first up I just wanted to mention that this video isn't about the religion Wicca or touches on any of the religious aspects of witch or witchcraft, and most of the practitioners of that religion prefer the term Wicca, okay? So today's video is purely about witches and witchcraft from a historical and a literary point of view, okay? Okay, so the word witch is actually an Old English word, wiki, which means witch. And the word witch itself actually means wise one. And that harks back to the days when witches were very much naturopaths and herbalists, and generally women who had a great deal of knowledge about herbal remedies and practical natural help in pain relief and so forth, okay? And the word warlock, which we come to associate with as a male witch, is again another Old English word, and that is from the word wayloga. And that word actually meant originally oath breaker or deceiver. Now the word got taken up by modern Scots, and they started using that word to describe a male witch, even though up until then the word witch was gender neutral and applied to either male or female. And from there, the Romantic literature writers took up the word to mean male witch, and it progressed down through into modern popular culture. In things like, never forget Bewitched, the word warlock was always used to describe Samantha's dad or her uncle or any of the male witches. Today there's a little bit of debate about using it, but it still has that romantic connotation that it separates male witches from female witches, okay? Witches and witchcraft are found all around the world, from ancient Egypt through to Africa, South America, China. Now the word witch may not be applicable in those cultures, but they all refer to witches and witchcraft or some sort of magic. And there's even talk of witches and witchcraft dating thousands of years ago. And one of the most famous examples of witches or witchcraft is in the Old Testament story from the Bible, the Witch of Endor. Now, in the Old Testament book of Samuel, King Saul of Israel is worried about his upcoming battle with the Philistines, and he's consulted his dreams, he's consulted prophets, and he still can't get any answers. He's prayed to God, he can't get any answers about what's going to happen. Now, because he's driven out all the necromancers and the magicians from Israel, he's got no way of finding out the information he needs. So he goes and disguises himself and looks for a prophet, and he comes across a woman who becomes known as the Witch of Endor. Now she summons up, or apparently summons up, the spirit of the prophet Samuel, and he berates Saul for disobeying God and prophesies that his army will be decimated and that he will actually die. And the next day, he actually finds that his army is totally wiped out by the Philistines, and he commits suicide. Now, the interesting thing about this fact is that because the Bible says, "Thou shalt not let a witch live," or words to those effects, the modern Bible and Christianity changed the word so that she became the medium of Endor. But then it was also realised that mediums were considered, people or figures that worked for the devil or used devil's magic. So they changed it, and once again she became just an ordinary woman who used ventriloquism to summon up or use the voice of the prophet Saul. That's one of the most famous examples, but of course there's others. Witches also appear in one of Shakespeare's most famous plays. It starts with the letter M. Now there's a superstition that you don't mention and just call it the Scottish play. Now, I don't know if in the 21st century the superstition sort of transcribes itself to social media, but being superstitious, I ain't taking any chances, let me tell you. So we'll just call it the Scottish play, but you'll know what I'm talking about. And in the Scottish play, the main character, comes across three witches who prophesies that he will become the King of Scotland. And that is one of the most famous opening scenes in theatre by any playwright. And Shakespeare had them looking very dark and mysterious. And back in those times, when that play was actually performed, witches were actually considered worse than rebels and worse than traitors. So that's why the portrayal of the three witches in the Scottish play is always portrayed as them being sort of evil or dark or mysterious, even though they prophesied that he will be King of Scotland. We all know what happens afterwards. Now, have you ever wondered why a witch's or a wizard's hat is usually triangular, roughly triangular in shape? Well, it's not a fashion statement, it's actually symbolic. Now, to be successful spellcasters, witches, wizards, warlocks needed to master three areas of their craft. And the first one is application, second one is intention, and the third one was focus or willpower. Now, application referred to the actual spell itself. They must have a thorough understanding and a thorough grounding of the spell, its consequences, or the ingredients or the words that were needed for it. Without that, it'd be like trying to play the piano with only half a sheet of music. Now, the second part was intention. Now, the witch, wizard, warlock had to have a strong intent to cast that spell. It wasn't just like, oh, I hope this works. They had to actually be able to visualize it working, to see the effects. So it was very much ties in with beliefs that visualization can actually create reality. And the third part was also very important. It was called focus or willpower. So that referred to the witches' power of the mind, their ability to focus, their strengths. You may have heard the term mana. Mana is a spiritual energy, and in many games, and you'll see this in comics and books as well, that a witch or a spellcaster needs mana to cast a spell, and that's spiritual energy, and that ties in with their willpower. So those three aspects form a triangle, and shapes have always had power. They've always been associated with mystical workings and rituals, and so that triangle translates into the witch's hat. And a witch wearing that type of hat could show to the world, without revealing anything about herself, that she'd mastered her craft, that she or he was a master at witchcraft, and even though they still learnt, of course, they were still able to declare that they had mastered the three aspects of their life that they needed to in order to become successful witches. Now, no discussion about witches and witchcraft would be complete unless we talked about flying on broomsticks. And this, unfortunately, Dark Realmers, is a tad delicate. So I'll try to be as politically correct and as nice as possible about this. Now, it wasn't uncommon for the early pre-Christian witches, as I've mentioned before, had a strong knowledge of herbs, of plant life, and so they were very aware of hallucinogens and plants that could produce hallucinations and those kind of effects. Now, sometimes they consumed those hallucinogens. Other times they would create a salve or a balm and they would apply it to the end of the broomstick, and they would, how shall we say, insert the broomstick in a certain area of their body. For female witches, it was their genitalia. And as that hallucinogenic was absorbed into the body and into the bloodstream, they began to move around thinking they were actually flying on broomsticks. This is partly where the legend comes from, but also too, it could be based on the fact that some of the witches who were convinced they were actually flying confessed that at their trials. It could also be that hysterical townsfolk claimed to have seen this, obviously not flying, but obviously perhaps they saw the witches attempting to fly. And this is where one aspect of the legend came from. There's also other rumours, which I won't go into now, but that'll give you some idea why we always associate witches with broomsticks. Okay, Dark Realmers, that's all I've got for you about witches and witchcraft today. Look, honestly, there's a heap more I could talk about, but that would make this video the length of, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and I don't want to do that. I hope you've liked it. I hope you've learned something once again. If you have liked it, please leave a comment, and please don't forget to subscribe. And tell me what you'd like me to do a series on for you. Something that you'd be interested in finding out some fascinating facts and trivia about, okay? So until next time, Dark Realmers, I'll just leave you with that. And remember, stay in the light and pleasant dreams. Bye for now.